Okay, so my name is Sky, and I have an idea for a TV show. Now, if you're familiar with it, you know about my idea called A Gang of Daggers. And that's based off a book, and I would make it a TV show and have all these high school kids be the main stars of the show. Now, once they graduate from high school and move on, they're going to, part of it is that I want these guys to learn a style of fighting, of sword fighting, kind of like professional wrestling, and that it looks real, but you can't tell. And you add in the CGI of the blood and puncture wounds later, but these guys are going to know this style of fighting, and where else would they be able to apply it? Well, I've kind of been thinking and kicking around my idea in my head about like how it'd be neat if you had a show kind of like Romeo and Juliet, but serialized and less crazy, less like cartoony in nature, and less like it's feudal times and or I mean Covington Cross was a neat show if you remember it, but it's like it's just a little weak at times, not enough violence in my opinion. I'm looking forward to HBO's how they're picking up George R.R. Martin's A Song of Fire and Ice saga, which God, that's gonna be crazy. Because there's incest. Two of the main characters they're in an incestuous relationship. But anyways, I think I've been trying to think about what would be the setting and how would you work it out. And I realized, well, this is what you do. You have a simple enough setting, and it could be 3, 4, or more cities on a like a peninsula of land, and you use whatever makeup you have for it. And it wouldn't be fantasy, so no magic, but it more like history reflexive is what I like to say. So that it's like what would people on Earth do in this situation? How would they behave? And that's like when you watch Rome, that's kind of how they approach things. Was there's they kind of had these real feelings and senses of what was the world and how the world was created, but also very cosmopolitan. They understood things as the way we would understand things, to a degree. Have that in this TV show as well. Now the key point of it is that you would have 4 writers, for one for each city, who was kind of in charge, or they kind of oversaw things. But what you would do is you would invite in and bring in the world's fantasy writers. All the guys who, write stuff like George Martin, George Duncan, Robert Jordan, his women, I keep forgetting his name, Raymond Feist, just, J.K. Rowling even, just anybody who, is anybody. And, the show would be kind of like The Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits in terms of just the storylines that you could have. But ideally you could each of these writers could write their own character, and they'd write out what their character did, and it would you could literally follow and watch these guys as they go along. Now now here's the rub. The actor, they get to play the role, they get a chance to choose, but whenever there's a fight, that's when it's up in the wind about who's going to win, who's going to survive or live, because the idea behind A Gang of Daggers is that you don't know who's going to die. The outcome of a fight is never known. The characters, the actors have to carry on and basically do the convincing, oh my God, these guys have died, or this person has died on me, acting, thing. But I think it would just be very neat and interesting, just to have that aspect, just let these writers kind of go nuts, and it wouldn't be, if they wanted it to be a full-time thing, sure, if not, yeah. Now, here's something else I thought was, well, what if, heaven forbid, one of these writers wasn't the best? Well, you can have I'm thinking you can have a sort of, not American Idol, but a sort of popularity contest thing about it. But I think really, you'd have a voting option, and if 3/4 of the people did not like the story. That means that there's a fourth of the audience that does like the story. So I'd say keep it in. But as soon as it crosses over that, really it's up to the author to think, well, I should either quit or I should change what's going on and see what happens. So that way, it's kind of a weekly thing of what you can see. You can imagine it'd be such a heavy show as a result because you'd have all these different writers. But maybe not, because like with Sopranos, you had all these different storylines going along. The thing is, some of these storylines have more going on in them, and others they're just stuff that's building up. The characters are building up, and things are happening. And as far as the background, like in my mind, what I got is that a plague goes through the communities, and so as a result, you have all these young people kind of left over, and that works because of the actors, the age of the actors. But so you got all these young people who are just they have to pick up the pieces of a devastated society, and they're either, I think really like they wouldn't even be together, they just be kind of like their own little city-states, or they kind of fragment into city-states. And so you get to watch as these communities pull together, fight each other, fight amongst themselves, dominate each other, you name it. And you kind of never know where the series is going to go. The location that you'd film this stuff at, I'm going to have to say Europe. And that's, because I think for one, it might be cheaper, but really it's the availability of like set locations, especially like castles, would make it easier. So, but I mean, just think about it. This is something I wanted to share with the world, and I was curious if anybody else would be interested in it. Because think about it. Your favorite author. You write your favorite author and say, hey, why don't you go write for this show? I would love to see what you could create. And some authors might not like it. The other thing is that the authors will get paid. If they can say, I'll do one episode, or I may do a couple episodes. They'll get paid for their work, and and if they sign on to become a full-time author, they'll get paid, a good, decent salary. So hey, why not? So, curious what you guys think.